they don't get what they want, they'll drop your contract. They've done it to lots of.
Hollywood's golden age may have given rise to iconic stars, but beneath the surface lay a darker truth. From child exploitation to systemic abuse, here are the top 5 woke disasters of the golden age. Number 5. Deceptive contracts. In the 1920s, Hollywood was booming. Tinseltown was on fire, viewers were completely immersed, and in the eyes of fans, film stars were simply kings, and one of them even became president. Like the proverbial bed of roses, everything was perfect until it wasn't. Okay, so you know how Hollywood film studios send talent scouts to discover potential stars? Like a football scout snooping through diamonds in the rough. It all sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, what if I told you that beneath this glamorous facade lie dark and unsettling secrets lurking just beneath the surface? Yes, these scouts brought in talented individuals and secured them with contracts and juicy incentives, often spanning several years, to protect the studio's financial interests. But here's the thing, it was a classic case of selling one's soul. To start with, the contracts were too good to turn down. Imagine signing a mega deal of $5,000 per week in the 1920s. Adjusted to today's inflation, that would be over $78,000 in a week. A crazy amount of money, especially for a rising star. But again, it was only a facade. As actors became more famous, their salaries often didn't rise accordingly. The deceptive contracts kept their rates fixed, regardless of their level of success. And guess what? These contracts weren't just for actors. They also extended to directors, writers, producers, cinematographers, art directors, and technicians. Everyone involved behind the scenes was subject to restrictive, studio-friendly, or selfish, if I'm being honest, agreements. But back to the film stars. You might be wondering why they didn't just walk away from the studio when faced with absurd terms, right? Well, the reality is, they couldn't. The fixed contracts ensured that actors would work for as long as the terms were, and no, they couldn't terminate it unless the studio deemed it fit, which in most cases meant the actor was unprofitable. Nothing could get them out of the agreement, and they had to follow it to the letter to get paid. Fatigue meant nothing. If the actors grew weary or burned out from their demanding roles, studios would resort to any means necessary to keep them going. Be sure to stick around until disaster number 3 to discover the shocking lengths studios went to keep actors fresh, even when they knew actors couldn't keep up. So you see, actors were trapped in binding agreements with their studios. Despite being the faces of the movies and the reason why the viewers filled the cinema, I mean, no one's paying their hard-earned dollar because MGM produced a film. They still had little to no control over their lives. They couldn't even refuse roles. Many chose to comply with the status quo, as failure to fall in line either meant losing their jobs or being blacklisted from the industry altogether. Remember the case of Jean Harlow? Breaking the scene as one of the original blonde bombshells, Jean Harlow was one of the most influential actors of the Golden Age. To date, she is still recognized for her amazing acting and gorgeous looks. But hey, not even one of the brightest stars in Hollywood's rich history could escape the tyranny of the industry. Signing a morality clause with MGM, Jean Harlow was forbidden to get married to William Powell. Can you imagine that? Actors couldn't even choose whom with they would spend the rest of their lives without studio interference. Want to know what's more disgusting? The reason MGM forbade Harlow to get married to Powell was simply because at the time, women were viewed as sexier than the common man when they were single. This made MGM cruelly deny her happiness. They wanted to squeeze as much money from their star as they possibly could. Oh, and how about Olivia de Havilland? Rising to fame as a teenager in Alice in Wonderland, she grew from strength in notable roles, including Gone with the Wind. After signing a contract with Warner Brothers in 1935, she became typecast and limited to shallow role offerings. In interviews, she expressed her frustration, stating that her roles were merely meant to fulfill the stereotypical function of the girl. Desiring more as the star she was, she began to refuse the parts her studio gave her. A star turning down not just one but multiple roles from a studio? It was completely unheard of. It enraged the studio bosses, who were eager to clip her wings and make an example of her, lest others do the same. At the peak of her career and still under 30, Warner Brothers immediately suspended her from their set without pay, causing de Havilland to lose significant money, fame, and influence simply because she decided to stand up for her rights. Thankfully, though, the evil guys in the industry finally bit off more than they could chew. With nothing to lose, de Havilland's determination was at an all-time high. She chose to fight the unjust system head-on, using every available means, including pursuing legal action. The repercussions were severe. For years, de Havilland found herself effectively blacklisted from the industry. Warner Brothers executives secretly spread nasty words to other studios about her having a difficult attitude to discourage them from offering her employment. After years, she emerged victorious. In 1943, Labor Code Section 2855, popularly known as the de Havilland Law, went into effect. Also known as the 7-Year Rule, its laws were put in place to prevent studios from exercising too much control over actors' careers. They no longer had the right to bind actors into long-term contracts without opportunities for growth or negotiation. This gave stars more freedom to choose their projects and advance their careers, including the option to refuse a role they didn't want to partake in. This victory was so monumental that one of de Havilland's biographers later stated, "It marked a significant blow to the dominance of the studio system." So you see, while Hollywood may have looked like a fairy tale land where dreams came true, the situation behind the scenes was often a nightmare. And if you still don't believe it, just wait until you see the next Hollywood disaster on our list.
I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like.
Number 4. Forceful cosmetic surgeries. If you thought wicked contracts were the worst thing Hollywood executives did in the Golden Age, then you've got another thing coming. Hollywood, as many say, often hides more than it reveals. From Jean Harlow to Marilyn Monroe, gorgeous leading women, especially blonde bombshells, have been hailed for their beauty and sensuality. But have you ever wondered how these women became what they were? During the Golden Age of Hollywood, Louis B. Mayer, co-founder of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios, famously asserted that creating a star was a meticulously orchestrated process behind the scenes. In his words, a star is made, created, carefully and cold-bloodedly built up from nothing. Make no mistake, he wasn't lying. History painfully tells us that appearing all glammed up in Hollywood comes with a price, a dreadful one at that. Marlene Dietrich, Joan Crawford, and Judy Garland, all iconic femme figures of their time, were subjected to insane pressures to conform to certain appearance standards. They had to keep a perfect jawline and an overall clean, clear look. Multiple accounts suggest Dietrich was forced to shed weight and drastically transform her appearance to align with often unattainable standards. Crawford reportedly had her back teeth extracted, which enhanced her cheekbones. Worse, her autobiography details rigorous beauty regimens, including the use of boric acid on eyelids. Studio heads wanted their ladies to be posh and perfect. If they couldn't keep up, or, hey, suffered from the inevitable walk of time, people like Mayer had a solution for that too. While plastic surgery was almost an unheard of practice worldwide in the 1920s, Tinseltown had different ideas. Over there, the pressure was immense, and cosmetic surgery was the order of the day. Despite the era's limited healthcare, which posed significant risks during recovery, aspiring stars in the industry were expected to be open to changing their physical appearance. And it wasn't just the simple stuff. They had to undergo procedures like rhinoplasty and facelifts just to be pretty enough for roles. It was so bad that many had to alter their image entirely if they ever hoped to work in the business. It breaks my heart to say this, but one notable example of Hollywood's nasty image demands was Rita Hayworth. To get roles, the actress felt pressured to change her hairline, resulting in a rigorous electrolysis procedure that went on for more than 2 years. And how about everyone's favorite bombshell, Marilyn Monroe? Originally known as Norma Jean Mortensen, Marilyn underwent a shocking transformation into the iconic blonde bombshell through hair bleaching and straightening. Yep, contrary to what many people think, Miss Monroe was neither blonde nor had straight hair. Her natural hair was curly and had a dark brown tint. Emmeline Snively, an aggressive agency head, bluntly told Marilyn that if she wanted to truly succeed in the industry, she had to bleach and straighten her hair, and the rest became history. But guess what? Facial appearances weren't the only shocking alterations that actresses had to make. The slender, attractive figures of the leading ladies from Hollywood's golden era didn't just happen by accident. Its creation and maintenance were strict requirements put in place by studios. Weight gains and the occasional tummy bumps, all unacceptable. It was so rigid and ironclad that contracts had clauses directly forbidding it. Before any major promotion, new talents underwent examination by studio executives, often accompanied by a dietitian. And it's not even like the studio heads were shy about displaying their expectations. Any woman who gained weight faced the ire of executives, who were more than happy to tongue-lash defaulters. Judy Garland, for one, was called a fat little pig with pigtails. MGM heads wanted her to stick to a rigid diet comprised only of black coffee, pills, chicken soup, and cigarettes. A truly demeaning combination just to keep her weight in check. But it wasn't just Garland. Female actors like Marilyn Monroe had to eat weird things and work out every day just so they could maintain a slender frame. Back in 1952, Monroe shared in an interview how she made it a habit of spending a minimum of 10 minutes every morning lifting dumbbells. And I wouldn't dare leave out how Greta Garbo was treated harshly on her arrival in Hollywood. Instead of a warm, cozy atmosphere, the Swedish actress was immediately confronted with the harsh reality of Tinseltown. A producer openly told her American audiences wouldn't like her because she was fat. Fearing the worst, Garbo had to change her diet, resorting to eating only spinach for extended periods of time. It was just a sad reality for many female stars of the golden era. The pressure to maintain a slender build forced them to go through great lengths, regardless of how difficult it was for their body to handle it. But hey, remember those bizarre contracts we discussed earlier, where actors were contractually bound to work tirelessly? Stay tuned until disaster number 2 to uncover the long-term repercussions of the exploitation. Now, before we go into all that, why don't you subscribe to our channel and hit the post notifications so you'll be the first to know when we drop another amazing video like this? But while you're on it, here's how producers made sure the actress survived the grueling conditions.
She was my sister from the beginning, the sister I never had. I'm an only child, Robert. But she was the love I...
Number 3. Coercive pill popping. Ever heard the saying, time is money? While the adage is true in many cases, by coercing substance abuse among many stars, producers took things up a wild notch. And no, I'm not just talking about established stars. I mean young and upcoming stars. You see, as Hollywood flourished, churning out an astounding 7,500 feature films between 1930 and 1945, the pressure on actors reached unprecedented levels. Time was of the essence, and it indeed was money. With studios operating on this mantra, the drawback fell on performers. Soon they were thrust into a relentless cycle of production, leaving little room for respite. To keep up with the demanding schedules, studios resorted to a sinister solution: pills. Yes, you heard right. In order to maximize productivity and minimize downtime, young actors were provided with uppers to sustain energy during grueling shoots and downers or sedatives to induce sleep when exhaustion inevitably set in. Did they care about their well-being, or were they even old enough to legally consent? Certainly not. This pervasive culture of pill popping was a means for studio bosses to keep their stars working and continue profiting from film production. According to 20th Century Fox Dr. Lee Siegel, the use of medication to keep stars going, even when they were tired, was alarmingly common. By the early 1950s, Siegel shockingly remarked that everyone was using pills. Can you imagine how insane that is? Even worse, many of those actors had to pop pills simply because producers lacked empathy. This dependence not only posed serious risks to their health, but also perpetuated a culture of exploitation, abuse, and manipulation within the industry, leaving countless stars to silently endure. For far too many, recovery was never even an option. One of the most sad and disgusting cases of this exploitation was the case of Judy Garland, the iconic actress and singer celebrated for her role in The Wizard of Oz. Despite being a teenager, she was given only a single day off each week and was subjected to grueling 18-hour workdays. In those days, she had to go through relentless singing and dancing. Of course, no one could handle all that without breaking down, especially a teenager. So, to sustain her energy levels, the studio supplied her with amphetamines, while sedatives were administered in the evenings to help her come down from the highs induced by the stimulants. But while these pills may have seemed like a pragmatic solution in the moment, especially given that all deadlines were met, the long-term effects were devastating. By the time Garland completed filming The Wizard of Oz, at just 16 years old, she was already ensnared in the grip of addiction to barbiturates and amphetamines. She simply couldn't do without it. But hey, that wasn't even the worst part. There are a myriad of devastating reports on how MGM ran their child stars into the ground. Like Judy Garland, the studio basically forced most, if not all, of their young stars to shoot film after film without taking breaks, pushing them to the brink of physical and mental exhaustion. Take the case of Mickey Rooney. Both signed with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer as pre-teens, and Garland and Rooney starred in numerous musicals together. Their partnership began in 1937's Thoroughbreds Don't Cry and extended to 7 more films, including 3 from the Hardy Family series, where Rooney played Andy Hardy and Garland portrayed his friend Betsy Booth. Yet, Judy Garland said they were both so high on drugs that they were practically hanging from the ceiling. As these vulnerable young stars grappled with the demands of fame and the relentless pace of the industry, their reliance on these medications deepened, often leading to addiction and tragic consequences. Yet in the eyes of studio producers, the expediency of pill popping outweighed any concerns for the well-being of their talent. And to make things even worse, Garland's struggles with body image were further exacerbated by the studio's insistence on unsafe dieting practices. They even had her take tons of dangerous drugs to maintain their unrealistic slender standards, like she wasn't already perfect enough. Unfortunately, whenever she sought medical assistance or therapy, MGM would deduct from her salary for any disruptions to filming. This led to her owing the studio over $100,000 at one point. Rooney and Garland shared more than just a professional bond. They were kindred spirits, finding solace in their shared struggles against MGM's cruelty. The duo battled drug and alcohol addiction from a young age. While Rooney triumphed over his demons in his 70s, he continued to act until his 90s. Garland, though, well, let's just say she wasn't so fortunate. Her life took a darker turn as she grappled with personal pain, resorting to substances to cope. Her adult career was marked by fleeting highs and profound lows, a tragic reflection of her inner struggles. By the age of 47, Garland had passed away from a drug overdose, a harrowing consequence of the dreadful on-set environment she endured for decades. In hindsight, the exploitation and mistreatment of stars like Judy Garland serve as a sobering reminder of the darker side of Hollywood's golden age. Behind the glitz and glamour was a polarizing reality. Countless performers suffered in silence, their voices drowned out by the relentless pursuit of profit and fame. Amid the wicked contracts, incentivizing pill-popping, cosmetic alterations, and forceful dieting of Hollywood's golden age, if it wasn't already painfully clear that the producers did not care about the health and well-being of their professional staff, case number 2 would expose the harsh truth. Number 2. Health? What health? So we have talked about a lot of things so far, right? How poorly child actors were treated, how women had to undergo harsh diets and cosmetic surgeries to maintain appearance, and also why stars couldn't just walk away from their studios. Unfortunately, manipulation, extortion, and straight-up bullying weren't the only challenges within the old-school Hollywood system. I mean, it's bad enough when directors use their power like a god complex over actors, but it's even worse when they turn a blind eye to the long-term and short-term health challenges they face. And surprise, surprise, MGM were the chief villains here. During Ava Gardner's marriage to Frank Sinatra, she had to undergo an abortion without his knowledge. Why, you may ask? She was forced to have the abortion because of MGM's silly penalty clauses, which prevent star actresses from having babies. In Jane Ellen Wayne's revealing book, The Golden Girls of MGM, Gardner shared her dilemma. She expressed concern about the potential impact on her career if she became pregnant, fearing her salary would be cut off. Yep, you heard right. With her husband, Frank Sinatra, facing financial difficulties and her future movie projects requiring extensive travel, she felt having a baby would complicate matters. The studio happily sent representatives to ensure the operation was made with the utmost discretion, keeping the matter strictly confidential. Now, regardless of your stance concerning the morality of abortions, make no mistake here. During the golden age of Hollywood, abortions were often risky. Without access to modern medical techniques, procedures were performed clandestinely and without proper medical supervision. Many women resorted to unsafe methods, including back alley procedures or self-inflicted abortions using dangerous substances or instruments. Even though star actresses were likely beneficiaries of top medical care for the era's standards, the methods put in place carried significant risks of infection, hemorrhage, and in the worst cases, death. And don't even get me started on the stigma surrounding abortion. Lacking legal protections or facing societal condemnation, women were losing on both sides. It's no surprise why MGM took the clandestine approach. They didn't want their precious asset to come under scrutiny. After all, maintaining a perfect, sultry image was kind of the reason why they were so hard on female stars. But hey, it's bad enough when a movie studio forces an actress to have an abortion. In Judy Garland's case, her mother fully supported the wicked antics of the studio. After taking the world by storm in 1939 as a teenager, with her breathtaking performance as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, Judy Garland became one of the hottest actresses in the market. No one could get enough of her. However, just a couple years later, the actress married David Rose without getting consent from MGM, who were pissed about the fact that she did so without their consent. Despite being an adult, they wanted her to remain young and evergreen in the eyes of moviegoers. So when she became pregnant, all heck was let loose. The studio and her mother immediately made arrangements for Garland to get an abortion, without her consent, of course. Okay, so they succeeded, right? Well, when Garland became pregnant yet again, this time from her interesting affair with Tyrone Powers, the studio made her have another abortion. Did they care about the fact that multiple abortions, especially with the mediocre health services at the time, were detrimental to her health? Certainly not. Did they also care about the fact that she was addicted to pills before she became a proper star? Of course not. They only cared about their money. Remember how the beautiful Dorothy Dandridge was referred to as the Black Marilyn Monroe by many moviegoers at the time? The flawless-looking actress became a star in the 1954 Otto Preminger film Carmen Jones. But hey, sparks were flying higher than the sky. The relationship between the actress and director went from meh to cordial and then sexual, the latter of which resulted in a pregnancy. Now, Preminger is married. He didn't think about the consequences of his actions beforehand. He didn't bother to take precautions. He only got his head when he found out Dorothy was pregnant. He refused to leave his wife in order to marry his pregnant mistress, and he permitted the studio's demand to get an abortion. The latter wanted her to remain a sex symbol and, well, let's just say having a baby would have reduced that appeal. Additionally, it didn't help that Dorothy was mixed race while Preminger was white. Miscegenation laws in 1955 were still a thing in many states, making it illegal for mixed-race couples to marry. But that's not even close to the most annoying cases of studio mayhem. Remember Lana Turner? Yes, Lana Turner broke into the film world as a teenager. Her role in the 1938 movie Love Finds Andy Hardy endeared her to America, earning her the nickname Sweater Girl for her shapely figure filling out a sweater. 3 years later, everything almost came crashing down. In 1941, Hollywood fixer Howard Strickling arranged for Lana Turner to have an abortion in Hawaii while she was on a publicity tour. The procedure took place in her hotel room without anesthesia. Turner's mother covered her daughter's mouth to muffle her cries while a studio doctor performed the abortion, which cost $500. The most annoying part of the debacle, all expenses were deducted from Turner's paycheck. Child star turned Academy Award-winning actress and devout Roman Catholic Loretta Young was one of the few Hollywood stars who adamantly refused to have an abortion. Young confessed to her biographer, Joan Wester Anderson, that she fell in love with Hollywood Lothario Clark Gable during the filming of the 1935 movie Call of the Wild. She revealed that Gable pressured her a lot, and she admitted to only slipping once. One slip led to a pregnancy. To conceal the pregnancy, Young feigned a mysterious illness, even granting a sick-bed interview with a gossip columnist. She gave birth in secret and arranged for the baby's adoption. Later, she publicly announced that she would be raising an orphan baby named Judy as a single mother. But speaking of babies, up next is inarguably one of the most evil pages of the Golden Age's books.
He was going to talk to me about a movie he wanted to put me in. I'm 12 years old, And I thought he was a producer, but instead he was an exhibitor. And I'd never seen anyone naked before, except myself, so I had no clue about what was happening.
Number 1. Child labor and abuse. Due to how common it is to see child stars in movies, it's easy to overlook the oddity of children being there in the first place. But when you really pause to think about it, it's quite surreal. How can they coexist in what are essentially adult workplaces? Just imagine walking to the bank and seeing pre-teens, school kids, or even babies at the counter. Such is the oddity of kids being on movie sets. On the one hand, it's an amazing experience for the kids to showcase their talent, but on the other, there are power imbalances, and where such exists, so does the danger of abuse. Whatever makes a child want to become a movie star leaves them vulnerable to so many issues. For instance, Garland was fed amphetamines by MGM to keep her clocking up to 72-hour shifts, and sometimes the villains can come from one's family. Remember when the Addams Family actor Jackie Coogan was notoriously robbed of his earnings by his parents? This led to the California Child Actors Bill of 1939. In any case, history suggests that Hollywood has a terrible child labor record, especially in the Golden Age. Directors and other crew members were known to employ harsh methods to elicit tears from young performers on camera. In some cases, they even resorted to punishment if someone was seen as wasting time. For instance, the Black Box, a confined space with only a block of ice as a seat, was one such extreme measure. It wasn't also uncommon for productions to compel young actors to work extraordinarily long hours, a practice that would be considered unthinkable today. So you see, it's such a shame that kids were never spared from the cruelty of old Hollywood. As kids will be kids, they're prone to getting into a little mischief here and there. But instead of a gentle reprimand, Shirley Temple, a child star herself, revealed that misbehaving children on set were sent to a dark, black sound booth and made to sit on a block of ice as punishment. Despite being sent to the box multiple times, Temple did claim it had done no lasting damage to her psyche. Its lesson from life, however, was profound and unforgettable. Time is money. Wasted time means wasted money, which leads to trouble. but as bad as the black box treatment sounds, it wasn't even close to the other evils she had to face. Ever heard whispers of how actors endured molestation, assault, and sexual harassment? Tales of casting couches and clandestine deals behind closed doors undoubtedly paint a grim reality of the industry's underbelly, where power dynamics were skewed and innocence was preyed upon. But what if I told you it wasn't just hearsay? What if the reality was far more insidious than you could have imagined? The truth is, the stories weren't just exaggerated rumors. They were harrowing accounts of exploitation and abuse that festered behind the glitz and glamour. Aspiring actors eager for their big break often found themselves trapped in a vicious cycle of manipulation and coercion. The pressure to succeed was immense, and many felt compelled to sacrifice their dignity and self-respect in exchange for a shot at stardom. Producers and directors wielded their influence like a weapon, preying on the vulnerability of hopeful talents and exploiting their dreams for their own gain. Sadly, Shirley Temple had to go through all of it, and more. At the tender age of 3, Shirley Temple made her debut in the 1932 film War Babies, marking her first credited role. This film was part of the Baby Burlesque series, consisting of 8 shorts that humorously parodied prominent motion pictures, film stars, celebrities, and contemporary events. In these whimsical yet often risque one-reelers, children imitate adult roles, donning adult attire while sporting diapers secured with oversized safety pins. There, Temple portrayed the actor Charmaine, a sex worker. Wouldn't you say it particularly eyebrow-raising given her age? Worse, the creators of the Baby Burlesques occasionally forced her to work the day after she underwent an operation to lance her eardrum. On another occasion, she was made to dance on a badly injured foot. And then came the sexual exploitation. In her autobiography, Temple wrote about a particularly disgusting first-time visit to MGM. After meeting one of the studio's producers, Arthur Freed, he took her to a private place, unzipped his trousers, and exposed himself to her, saying, "I have something made just for you." Thankfully, she giggled nervously, which irked the producer enough to throw her out of his office. Did he face the consequences of his action, though? Certainly not. Freed went on to produce films like Annie Get Your Gun and Singin' in the Rain, both in the 1950s. Throughout her brief career in Hollywood, Temple was forced to ward off sexual predators. She was threatened, assaulted, and even groped by top figures in the industry. On one occasion, when she adamantly turned down the sexual advances from a Hollywood producer, he boldly told Temple that he was going to be a big executive, so it was only in her best interest to accept his formalities. However, like the queen she is, she defied him once again, saying, "It may be in your contract, but not mine." Littered in her autobiography Child Star were numerous cases like this. The repetitive sexual exploitation was so bad that she came under the impression that casual sex was a condition of employment. And that wraps up our journey through Hollywood's darkest disasters of the Golden Age. If you found this video eye-opening, give it a thumbs up and let us know which disaster shocked you the most in the comments below. But wait, don't click away just yet. Be sure to watch the video currently displaying on your screen for an even crazier expose into the secret life of Hollywood. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.